Hello again to a very special episode of Mahoney Live. Hopefully you remember several weeks ago, we spoke to Michael Naughton, who was talking about the largest or the biggest case of British injustice, this miscarriage of justice for an innocently imprisoned man called Clive Freeman. Well, Clive's out on a day release. This is his third day release in 35 years. And I wanted to catch up with his group of support to have a little chat with Clive. But it is a little strange because Clive is obligated to not participate in any photographic means. So what we're going to do is we're going to take him off camera, but we can have his voice and have a chat with him, because this is a case we followed very personally from the start when I heard about it. And I would like to make the public more aware of not just Clive's case, of the possibility of many, many other people that have been put in prison for a crime they didn't commit. So let's see if we can get hold of the other group now. I know they're talking live from a studio conference room in the UK. Are you there, gentlemen? Good morning. And ladies.
Hi. Hi.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you back again. Clive is in the room, I believe, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, Clive, we can hear you, but this is a little strange. We have to keep you off camera because it's considered photography. So, Clive, how are you feeling on your third day out? It must be overwhelming coming out after 35 years, seeing the changes.
Well, it is overwhelming, and I must just say that I've never, ever even used a mobile phone in my life. That's how backward I am. And I mean, everything is different, and you know, I am overwhelmed.
I'm sure. The case is extremely interesting, Clive. I've been through it with Arron and Michael, and also Terry's talked about it a lot over the years. The forensic evidence is seriously flawed. Nobody wants to listen to the barrage of new information that shows that it was flawed that day you had in court. They're ignoring your appeal case, and they're just hoping, basically, that you're just going to accept it. Clive, I believe they've offered you some sort of deal as well, like a parole, but you never took it. They offered you, what was it, 10, 15 years ago? They offered you some sort of parole position, but you declined it. Can you explain why?
After a parole board meeting in 1998, my wife was very, very ill. And the parole board in the past have always said to me that I'm in denial, you're in denial. And then I used to just get up and walk out. But then in 1998, they said to me, Mr. Freeman, have you changed your stance? They made a different word. They said, have you changed your stance? I said, how can I change my stance? I had nothing to do with the death of Mr. Hardy. So then after the parole board meeting, one of the members of the parole board said to me that if I changed my stance, I could be released within 18 months. And he said you could possibly get to see your wife again. They didn't realize how ill my wife was, and my wife was my everything. I was married for 32 years and 135 days, and so sadly, she died at the end of 1998. But I made a pledge to her. I used to send tapes out to her whilst I was in Whitemore prison and in Swellside, and I made a pledge to her, which she asked me for, that I would never leave prison until I was rightly exonerated. And that is the pledge that I'm standing by. I've been offered parole ever since. If I jump through all the hoops that they want me to jump through, I could have been released a long time ago, and I will stand by my pledge.
That's very admirable. There's not many people who would take such a moral stance on that, Clive. Some people may call it foolish, but I believe once you have made a decision, especially with a sacred pledge to your wife that's passed, I completely understand. I don't think I'd have the courage to be able to fulfill that pledge personally, but it shows the fortitude and determination you have to clear your name. Guys, what's the latest then? Michael, are you making any...
Can I make one of the parole board members said to me, if you continue with this stance, you could double your tariff. If you continue, you could double your tariff. Well, in actual fact, I've trebled my tariff by taking the stance that I have. I should never have been convicted. Everything about the case is wrong, but you know, I pleaded no case to answer, so I said nothing in court, and the rebuttals from the person who defended me were almost nil. So you know, anyway, I'm just explaining that to you.
Yeah, thank you for it's all of the information is helpful for the viewers, Clive. Where are we at now then, guys? Is there any hope in the future? Have you made any forward progress about getting this case to the appeal courts or any form of proper justice?
Yeah, I mean, what happened on Saturday, there was a conference at the University of Bristol. It was Empowering the Innocent Conference. And we had 2 representatives from the Criminal Case Review Commission. Now, they've rejected 4 applications of Clive so far. And we believe that they've misunderstood what's being asked of them. Because in each of the applications that's gone in, what's happened is that the original forensic pathologist, which was a guy called Dr. Richard Shepherd, he claimed that Clive Freeman had murdered Alexander Hardy. And each of the applications that's gone in has just been, you know, a growing number of global expert forensic pathologists who've said that Mr. Hardy was not murdered. He either died of natural causes or you can't actually give a cause of death. But more recently, a guy called Professor Kroll, he gave evidence that said that the method by which Clive was supposed to have murdered Mr. Hardy, it could not happen, because the weight required to asphyxiate. What's wrong with my to suffocate? Asphyxiate somebody by kneeling on their chest. That Clive Freeman, who weighed 200 pounds at that time, would only represent a small proportion of the weight required to asphyxiate. So we had 2 representatives from the Criminal Case Review Commission there. Hannah Pickup, who's a student volunteer with Empowering the Innocent, who's been working on Clive's case, and Terry Wilcock, who's a long-standing friend of Clive's. They gave a presentation to the CCRC, and in response to that presentation, which I'd like them to say a little bit more about now, the CCRC agreed to meet with us to put more our case to them in person, because I think they accepted in that meeting that they didn't really understand on the paperwork what was actually being put forward. So we've sent a request already, and we haven't had a reply yet, to follow up on their invitation to meet with them, with Clive's lawyers and other people, experts, to put the case to them in person. And we're hoping that might move things along a little bit.
Well, that sounds very promising. You mentioned something last time, which I thought was quite, sometimes you get a sign that you're on the right path. You mentioned the word burking. Do you remember? That's the technique of putting pressure on, because it was invented by these 2 guys up in Edinburgh that were murdering people for scientific autopsy advancements. The funny thing is, the last film that Simon Pegg did, my friend wrote the script for it. So when you said it, I was because I remember helping him with the script about 15 years ago. Funny little small circle world. So that sounds very, very promising then. So you're going to get a chance to present your case and your evidence in front of somebody that might be able to alternatively put pressure on the right people to hear some more case histories and scientific evidence. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, Anna spoke prior to me speaking, and then I was asked to speak. I wasn't prepared for it. I've known about the occasion for a month, but it was only on the morning of the occasion that he sprung it on me, did Michael. But I stood up with no notes and no papers, and I started talking about how I met Clive. I'm an ex-offender. I met Clive in prison. It was a prison which were 80% sex offenders, so I had to be careful who I associated with, because I find it difficult to associate with sex offenders. Anybody who hurts women and children, I find it very difficult to,
of course,
to engage with. And I used to jog around on an evening around the prison. I used to see this guy, a loner, And I noticed him on occasion, and I seen him in the dining room. He was always alone, and on an evening he'd be speaking into a dictaphone as he were walking. And I stopped one evening beside him and tried to engage with him, and I did. He explained eventually what he was convicted for, and gave me some insight into the history of his case. And at the same time, I'd been going to the church on a Saturday morning, and we used to go for coffee after church. And there I met a guy called Rohan Pashad, and I used to go to the gym, and he asked me to take him to the gym and train him, because he was like a fish out of water in the gym, and he spoke very well, and he was very well groomed. And I asked him what he was in for, and he was in for VAT fraud. And after a while, I think after 3 or 4 weeks, he said, "I'm actually a solicitor," he said at the time. He said, "But I don't like to, obviously, solicitors don't go down well in prison, so he liked to keep it quiet." I said, "You'll be fine, you'll be fine, you'll be okay with me." So I took him under my wing. And then after more time, at the same time, I'll be speaking with Clive, and we're talking about his case on an evening. And when we walked, we'll be talking about it. And I asked Clive, it might be interesting to meet a guy I've been speaking to about his case, might be able to help. Clive said, "Well, I've had so many prison lawyers," he called them prison lawyers. He said, "They all let me down." And then Rohan Pashad said something else to me. He said, "Actually, Terry, I'm not a solicitor." I thought we were going to say I'm a sex offender, but he didn't. He said, "I'm actually a Queen's Counsel." Well, automatically I thought, this is it. We've got a good case here. We've got a good chance to get someone to look at this case. So I asked Clive and Rohan if they'd meet, and we did one evening in the cell. So I'm trying to speed up this now for the sake of the viewers and the time we've got on this show. But to cut a long story short, we did meet, we talked about the case. Rohan advised that we get the papers from the solicitors, the current solicitors. They arrived, 13 boxes, and we looked through every single box, paper by paper, up all night. And then it would go from my cell, that box would go to Rohan's cell. He'd look through them paper by paper. Clive had already done it a million times. Eventually, he found a document, did Rohan Pashad, and he'd done a lot of medical claims and insurance claims. But he was used to looking at doctor's notes, and maybe that's why I actually missed it, because he got the box after me, one by one. He said, it came one evening, he said, "I think I might have found the document was going to get Clive's case overturned." He said, "We'll talk about it this evening in Clive's cell." So we goes for a meeting in Clive's cell, and there was a document. It was Richard Shepherd's original conclusion after the first post-mortem, and it was cause of death, acute pancreatitis, probably alcohol related. Yeah, and that document had been concealed for 25 years. Clive had served 25 years by this time. As it turns out, it was sent by mistake by Richard Shepherd's secretary on the 2005 application to the CCRC, and nobody disclosed it. And Rohan found it. So basically, what Shepherd was saying after the first post-mortem is exactly what the pathologist for the defence was saying at the trial. That's exactly what he was saying. It's probably alcohol and drug related.
Yeah.
Shepherd the same. But he had 2 more post-mortems. Suddenly, on the third post-mortem, he discovered bruising to the back, which meant it must have happened by a heavy object on the chest of Mr. Hardy. So he fabricated more evidence to back this theory of Birkin. He fabricated the evidence. The bruises no one's ever seen, only Shepherd. no one's ever seen them.
No photographic evidence of the bruises.
It goes totally against the conditions of any pathologist. We've got it. There was no incision to the bruising, or at least it said there was, but yet no one's ever seen any evidence of that. So basically, it was very flamboyant and dramatic, and theatrical in his court appearance, as opposed to Mr. Mann, who was 40 years experience, very quiet. Cut a long story short, but it is a long story, and there's so much more to this story. The jury sided with Shepherd.
One thing that Terry forgot to mention there is something which is very instrumental to this case, and it's something that Terry found himself. So Terry found, once he was aware that there were previous postmortems, and it was only on the third postmortem that Dr. Shepherd changed his opinion, Terry kept searching and searching and searching, and he's come across a memo from the Metropolitan Police at Southwark. And Terry's found this, and this is what it says. Dear Dickie, herewith enclosed the extract, right?
I promised.
I promised. Yours sincerely, Janet. Now, Clive says that Janet is Janet Carter, who was heading up the investigation. And that memo that was sent to Dear Dickie, and I've seen him interviewed on programs where they refer to him as Dr. Shepherd or Richard. I've never seen him referred to as Dickie. And this is 35 years ago, remember? And then there is no extract. And that comes between the second postmortem and the third postmortem. So we want to know what was the extract that was sent to the forensic pathologist that made him, just before he changed his mind. Because it comes at a crucial time, because after the second postmortem, he's still saying there is no murder, just like he said in the first one.
Yeah.
And he changed his mind.
Yeah.
There's no evidence, there's no photographs for what he claims made him change his mind, but there's this suspicious memo which makes a reference to an extract. We think it's from an article. Terry thinks it's an article on Birkin. She thinks Terry thinks that Janet Carter, who was promoted after the conviction of Clive Freeman for her work, he thinks that must have been an article to do with Birkin, and Terry wants that to be disproven.
Yeah.
Okay, can I say something?
Yes, absolutely, Clive. Go ahead.
In court, we've got it here amongst us here. We've got Professor Mann's testimony in court. They ask about the bruising to the back, and they show the post-mortem photographs. And Professor Mann in court on page 83G, right at the bottom of the page, he says, there's hyperstatus, but I cannot see any bruising. So they give those same photographs, which I have seen, to the prosecution pathologist, Mr. Paget, who is now Lord Paget. He's top of the tree. And his exact words were, unhappily, I cannot see any bruising. Now, that is of the post-mortem photographs that were shown in court. I've seen them. They've suddenly vanished, and we're trying to get them back from the police. And we have, since 2016, we've been trying to get the originals back from the police, and we have had no success. But there is nobody has seen the bruising except Dr. Shepherd. And carry on, Teddy will tell you that he said the only way he found the bruising, because it wasn't visible to the eye, he found it through a deep dissection of the back. Now, those photographs that were produced in court had no dissection, no marks on them. The only marks on the back were recorded as acne scars. So they were looked at quite specifically. Now, Professor Dr. Shepherd is lying, and I don't say that with any, that's 100% certain. He was lying, and we have this, we have a taped telephone conference of him. We have the transcripts of it with him and the CCRC, where he said that he made deep dissections to the back, and he found the bruising, which was deep bruising, because he was trying to wriggle out of saying how come there was no visible sign of bruising. I mean, to me, that's BS. Yeah.
It sounds suspicious, to say the least, considering that the photographs from the case file have suddenly Houdini'd and nobody's been able to lay their hands on them. The police are deliberately withholding evidence there. I think that's quite evidently clear. So when is this next step Clive, what's next? Have you got another day release coming up soon?
Well, I don't know about after this, but I have to do a certain amount of day releases because the parole board are insisting on certain conditions that I have to fulfill now, because you have to jump through many hoops while you're in prison.
Yeah.
And I've been very, very ill, and I'm actually quite ill right now. So I've been stalling those hoops, but I'm getting more and more pressure to do them. So I am expecting another day release within a month.
Okay, so let's talk again when you get out next time. I'd like to catch up. Are you going to be able to give a date on this next meeting, Terry and Michael?
Sorry, Dave, I just wanted to mention something as well.
Okay.
There was so much surveillance in London at that point in the hotel where Clive stayed that evening.
Yeah.
No, you know, there would have been footage of him leaving. It would have been impossible. This is something else to take into account, and something else as well. They made out as if Hardy was a non-smoker.
Yeah.
Which was absolutely false. We've got family members that have admitted that he was a heavy chain smoker and an alcoholic. So these are just things that are building up to paint the picture, really.
It doesn't surprise me, Arron, the lies that the police tell.
Can I say something else? And when Terry mentioned that I was talking into a cassette,
yeah,
I was talking to Michael Nicholson. You probably know the name. He was the war correspondent of the year, and he was an ITV newsreader. You probably know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He published several books. Now he actually interviewed me in Rhodesia during the Bush War. I was actually wounded at that time, and he came down into the bush, into a very unsafe area, and he interviewed me. And he remembered me because he applied for a visit, and he visited me in this prison where I am now. But the second time that he came, they refused him entry because they found out that he was a journalist. Well, he wasn't. He said, I'm an ex-journalist. But he was going to help me with my case, and I was talking to him on the tape. That's why when Terry said I was talking into a cassette tape, and I had, my world dropped away when he sadly died on a cruise ship. He had a heart attack. But I was in contact with him for about a year and a half, and he was, he was really involved in my case.
That's a sad story, and also yet again more evidence of your civil rights being denied. There was no grounds for him being refused a visit. They were just scared of the truth getting out, Clive. Again, more evidence that should be made public and shown to be the case. I mean, well, guys, is there what else would you like to add? Off you go.
Yeah, just before you finish, I think what we're going to have. Arron's actually been speaking to people who can do these kind of mass kind of marketing, I would call it, kind of campaign to bring more and more people in. And we've thought that the face of that campaign could be Hannah to do like a YouTube short video to draw people in. So maybe Hannah could just say something before we end.
Yeah, so I think when I was doing the presentation, because I hadn't actually met Clive at that point, I kind of focused a lot on the facts and kind of setting out a very clear kind of chronological version of what happened, which I think is quite a good way of people looking at it, because obviously we have Terry who gave a really personal account, which kind of, yeah, shows the personal side of the case, but also it's good to have, yeah, quite a factual account of exactly what happened. And I do think we've kind of talked about trying to appeal to my generation and the kind of younger generation, because really, as time goes on, we will be the ones who will be able to change things. And I do think there's quite a strong sense of justice among people my age. And so really the more kind of different groups of people that we can get involved, the more likely Clive's case is to kind of
the younger generation.
Yeah, and just to say as well, Dave, just to give everybody a reminder after this show, the link to the petition, which is put in place to help people like Clive, is in the show notes. So please, just don't just watch it. Make sure you click it as well. It could be you. It could be anything.
Well, this is what.
Oh, sorry. Can I just clarify one point? What Michael said regarding the memo. The memo didn't come between the second and third post-mortem. What happened was there was 3 post-mortems in 1988. There was 3 in the last
16th, the 20th, and the 25th.
the 16th of April, the 20th of April, and the 25th of April. But I was a bit dismayed when I found the memo, because I always suspect something had happened. Obviously on the last post-mortem, but the memo was dated the 1st of June 1988. So I was a bit dismayed. I thought, well, it can't have much relevance really to the decision. But then I looked at the reports that Dr. Shepherd had written for each post-mortem, and on the 3rd post-mortem, which was the 25th of April 1988, then the memo was dated the 1st of June 1988. But guess what? The report regarding the 3rd post-mortem was written by Shepherd on the 20th of June 1988. So it came between the 3rd post-mortem, the discovery of the bruising, then the memo, then the report.
Yeah.
It stinks.
Inconsistencies. It's quite a big date difference, isn't it, from when the post-mortem happened to the report being presented. I see the point on that one as well. So many things in this case are obviously, there's a big question mark and should be underlined and addressed. Well, I hope you have some good news by the time we speak again in the next few weeks. Clive, how much longer have you got free today? What time do you have to be back by?
4 o'clock.
1 o'clock. So really
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. Okay. Well, I'm going to get this out. Please send me the links and how we can follow the case. There is going to be a PayPal link where you can contribute towards Clive's case and his expenses. I'm going to contribute straight away, Clive, as soon as we get the link set up. I believe Arron is doing that. Karen, Terry, Arron, and Michael, thank you so much for being so strong in your humanitarian work and helping Clive. Clive, I wish you all the very best, brother. Hang in there. I admire your determination and your moral line. You're a bright, shining star to many people. And I expect people in the younger generation, like Karen's age, I'm not sure how old you are, but they've been addressing you as a younger generation. It's inspirational for people of your generation, because for old guys like us, we know what really goes on. We've been through the years of the Birmingham 6 and the Guildford 4. We know about this miscarriage of justice that the British Crown and the prosecution service is not unheard of happening before. So as this case unfolds, we'll do our very best, Clive, to get the information out and get the truth out to as many people as we can by the links and the information in the videos. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'd just like to add this quickly. The person who took the biggest interest in my case and who's been my savior, I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for him, is Father Hugh Sinclair, who was a solicitor for 10 years before he became a prison chaplain at Wormwood Scrubs. And he was behind the Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4, the East Ham 2, the Tottenham 3, the Bridgewater 4, all those cases Father Hugh worked on. And sadly, he's very ill at the moment. He's the same age as me, but he was a director of Oscott College. He was a theological director for the Catholic Church there. And he and Sister Agnes were the mainstays behind the Guildford 4 and the Birmingham 6. And he's the man who's kept me fighting this case all the time. He's a wonderful man, and if you could just mention him at any one stage, because
yes, Dave, sorry to interrupt you, Clive. Dave, you actually interviewed him.
I've interviewed Father Hughes, right?
Obviously, they're not doing too well at the moment. Otherwise, he'd have jumped on. If you want to bring that link back to the recent show notes of this today, and people can get a good gist.
Absolutely. Well, Clive, Michael is battling very hard, and I know Arron, he talks to me all the time about the case. Terry, I've met in person in the UK last year, or two years ago. Karen's new to the team, but I expect good news from all of you over the next.
Sorry, it's Hannah.
Hannah, I was hearing Karen. I'm sorry, Hannah.
It's okay.
I heard Karen. I actually even wrote it down.
Oh,
but Clive, I wish you all the very best. I'll fulfill what we talked about earlier as soon as I can. And then please keep me posted, everybody. We'll speak to you very soon. And good luck with this campaign of truth it's very, very admirable that, and I can see why they're fighting hard to keep it under the blankets, because this is going to put some serious egg on people's faces, and it is an absolute shambles of a case file and an embarrassment to the Crown Prosecution Service, which they all need to be held responsible for. So good luck with your quest, and we'll talk very soon about any updates. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for all your.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.